The derelict had been drifting the hollow reach for 11 years before my tug's sensors caught the ping. 11 years is a long time for a hull that size to go unclaimed. Salvage crews are not sentimental people, but even we have a rule about the reach. You don't go near a wreck that still has active warden signatures. Something on board is still guarding something. You leave it alone. I didn't leave it alone. My contract had gone bad 3 systems back. My fuel reserve was thinner than I like to admit, and the ping was coming from a hull class I recognized, a ceremonial transport, the kind that once carried royal blood between courts, all gilded ribbing and long ceremonial viewports built for a crowd that would never again stand at them. Ceremonial hulls carry ceremonial cargo. I told myself that was the only reason I matched trajectory and burned in. I had spent 20 years telling myself things like that, about wrecks I had no business boarding, and most of the time it had even been true. I was wrong about the cargo, and I knew it inside of 4 minutes aboard. The transport's spine was cracked clean through, vented to space along its full length, every deck lit only by the thin, cold light of the system's dwarf star bleeding through the breach. I moved through frost-rimed corridors with my helmet lamp off, because the starlight was enough, and because something about the silence made me want to keep from adding my own noise to it. I found the wardens first. 4 automated sentries, dormant, magnetized to the deck outside a sealed compartment near the transport's heart. Their weapon housings dark, but their status lights slow-pulsing amber. Guarding, not hunting. I'd salvaged enough dead hulls to know the difference. Whatever was behind that door had been sentenced to something, not simply abandoned to it. The door had a manual release. Somebody, a long time ago, had wanted it to be openable by hand. She was chained to the deck by a restraint collar fused into the floor plate itself, kneeling in starlight that came down through a fracture in the hull directly above her, as if the ship itself had been built, or broken, to keep that one shaft of light falling on that one spot. Her skin was a deep amber, that the cold had gone waxen and gray at the edges. Her hair, dark copper, had grown long enough in captivity to pool on the deck plate around her knees. When she lifted her head and looked at me, her eyes were sea green, and they held no fear at all. Only a terrible, exhausted patience, like a woman who had stopped expecting anyone and had simply kept enduring out of habit. "You're not one of them," she said. Her voice was rough from disuse, but steady. "I don't know who they are," I said. "I'm nobody's anything. I'm a salvage pilot." "Then you should leave," she said. "The wardens will wake the moment my collar reads a foreign hand on it. They are very good at their work." I asked her what work that was, and she told me, plainly, without self-pity. She had been sentenced by her own council 11 years ago, in the purge that put her half-brother on the throne, to be left here, not executed, because execution would have made her a martyr her people might rally behind, but simply erased. Forgotten in the dark, in a ship built to hold her and nothing else, until she either died of it, or the universe finally agreed she no longer mattered. Her name was Alira. She did not tell me a royal title. She told me her name the way a person tells you the one true thing they have left. I want to say I had a plan. I didn't. I had a torch cutter, a stubborn streak, and 11 years of quiet fury sitting behind her sea-green eyes that I found I could not walk away from. I told her I wasn't leaving without her, and she almost smiled, the closest thing to it her frozen face could manage, and told me I was a fool, and that the wardens would kill me for it. I cut the collar anyway. The wardens woke exactly as she'd promised, all 4 at once, weapon housings flaring to a dull red charge, and I put myself between them and her because there was nowhere else to put myself. I am not a soldier. I have never pretended to be brave in the way soldiers are brave, but I had a torch cutter still hot from the collar, and I had 11 years of somebody else's stubbornness now sitting in my own chest, and when the first warden lunged, I put the flame through its optic housing, and it went down hard, and did not get up. It bought 2 seconds. Alira used them. Chained 11 years, starved thin, she still moved like a woman who had once commanded a war room. She came up off the deck, seized a fallen warden's disabled limb as a bar, and put it through the legs of the second sentry, with a precision that told me everything about who she'd been before the purge. Between the 2 of us, and more luck than skill, we dropped all 4 before they dropped us. I took a graze along my ribs that would ache for a month. She took nothing worse than the cold had already given her. Afterward, in the silence that followed, we stood among 4 dead sentries in a ship that had held its breath for 11 years, and neither of us said anything for a while. My ribs were burning where the graze had opened my suit's inner lining, and my hands hadn't stopped shaking since the first warden went down. The kind of shake that only shows up once the danger's already over and your body finally admits how afraid it was. She noticed. She said nothing about it, which I took, later, as its own kind of courtesy. I did the only thing that made sense to me. I stripped the thermal wrap from my own suit lining and put it around her shoulders, because the frost had gone deep into her, and my ship's medbay was still 4 decks and a hard vacuum crossing away. She flinched at the touch, not from fear, I understood later, but because it had been 11 years since anyone had touched her without meaning her harm. "Why?" she asked, when we were moving again, her voice steadier now, warming with the wrap and the walking. "You gain nothing from this. My court will not thank you. My brother will call it theft of a state prisoner and hunt you for it." "I didn't come here for a reward," I said. "I came here because you were alive and nobody had bothered to notice." She stopped walking. In the dim starlight, her sea-green eyes went bright and wet. Though she did not let the tears fall, I understood by then that she had trained herself, over 11 years, never to let them fall, because a queen who wept where anyone could see her had already lost something she could not afford to lose. She looked at me the way I imagined no one had looked at anyone in that ship in over a decade, like I was the first true thing she'd been handed since the door closed on her. "No one has called me alive in 11 years, she said. "They called me a problem solved." "They were wrong," I said. "That's all. Somebody had to be, eventually." We reached my tug with 40 minutes of air to spare. I signaled the 2 loyalist officers whose beacon codes she still had memorized after 11 years in the dark. The only 2 names, she told me. She trusted not to have turned coat for her brother's throne. They met us at a neutral relay point 3 days later, and I watched 2 grown soldiers go to their knees on my own cargo deck at the sight of her. Not because a crown told them to, but because they had believed her dead, and she was standing in front of them instead, thin and frost-scarred, and entirely, stubbornly alive. She didn't ask me to stay. She knew what I was, a man who fixed broken things and moved on, and she was too honest, even in gratitude, to pretend that a wrecked hull and a torch cutter had made me something I wasn't. But she took my hand before she left through that relay gate, in front of the 2 soldiers who would not meet my eyes out of respect, and she held it the way you hold the one thing in a long ordeal that was never a lie to you. "They will write, eventually, of the day the throne was reclaimed," she said. "They will not write your name into it, I will." I told her that was more than I'd ever expected out of the Hollow Reach, and she told me, quietly, that expecting nothing was the safest way to live, but that she intended, from now on, to expect better. I still fly the Reach sometimes, when the contracts are thin. I still watch the sensors for pings that shouldn't be there. Most of them are nothing. But I keep the torch cutter charged, just in case. Because I learned something out there I hadn't expected to learn at my age. That the whole galaxy can call someone finished, sentenced, forgotten, and be wrong about every part of it, if just one person refuses to leave without them.